all this stuff about fundamentalism I've been talking about, it's sometimes referred to as foundationalist epistemology. Foundationalist epistemology. Epistemology meaning to do with knowledge. How can we know what we know? What are the proper grounds for knowing what we know, and so on. And foundationalist being a kind of mode of knowing which says that you start from the bottom and build up. It's a building metaphor for knowledge, as I've talked about before. Foundationalist epistemology. And it's not the only one. I do want to articulate... knackered. I do want to articulate some others a little bit. But I think it's just worthwhile just having a quick look at some of the origins of that, or some of the best articulated historical uses of it. Because you do find it in really mainstream and well-developed philosophies. And in someone like Descartes, for example, Descartes uses it a lot. You know, he's very, very overt about it. You know, he talks about foundations and how important it is to find the key fact, and he does compare it, you know, to digging in the earth and laying down bricks and making sure you don't build on sand and all those kind of things. So he's very invested in foundationalist epistemology and articulates it very well, and has been critiqued for that, actually. Some people writing later, Charles Peirce for example, critiqued that exact kind of foundationalist epistemology, because although it's useful, it's not the only game in town and it has drawbacks. But the other thing that Descartes does, which I think is interesting, because somewhere in, I think it's on Discourse on Method, he switches metaphor kind of mid-flight. So whilst he's talking about, as I say, foundations and building and all those kind of things, he switches to a kind of unusual metaphor to do with apple barrels. And he says that if you want to, he compares a body of knowledge that we have, the sum total of knowledge, or that we think might be knowledge, facts, data, information. He compares it to a barrel of apples, and he says if you want to know what's absolutely true, then you have to, in metaphorical terms, you have to kind of empty the barrel out. You know, if all these facts are like apples in a barrel, and you want to know which facts are right and which facts aren't right, what's true and what's not, what you'd have to do is you have to empty the barrel out and then look at each apple individually and really carefully inspect it, and only put back the ones that are completely free of brown spots and maggots and contamination, so that you've got dead certainty about the knowledge that you're putting back into your container of knowledge. Yeah, only the sound apples, only the sound knowledge is retained. And of course, when he does it, he empties everything out by the method of doubt, you know, the rigorous methodological doubt he applies. And when he does that, gets to the bottom of the barrel, scrapes the bottom of the barrel, and the first apple he looks at, or the final apple, the apple he looks at first, and says, this one I can definitely put back, is the one that's articulated in the cogito. You know, I think, therefore I am. You doubt everything else. I can't. It is possible. It might seem perverse, but it is possible that everything about me could be an illusion. I could be being subject to the whims of a malicious demon out to betray me or to deceive me. I could do that. Could all be a simulation of the computer. It's unlikely, but just about possible. But the one thing I can be absolutely certain about is there's something called a thinking being having these thoughts right now. Even the doubting is a kind of proof of the existence of thinking going on. So the thinking apple goes back first. There is some thinking going on, and then it proceeds from that. And the apple he tends to place, I think he puts in next, which is to do with the existence of God. I think it would be dubious. I would probably want to take that one out again, or at least have another look at it. But in terms of what he's talking about, in terms of knowledge, that's not the same as a foundationalist building metaphor. In this one, knowledge is considered to be a kind of container that you fill with ideally really sound facts. You know, the ones at the bottom don't have to be load-bearing. The ones you put in first don't necessarily have any more significance than the ones you put in later. It's just a barrel of apples. So that's really different, you know. And I don't know if you get this as well, but if I just allow myself to think about building metaphors of knowledge, and then switch and allow myself to think about apple barrel versions of knowledge, it feels different. I can feel the difference because these metaphors have different entailments. As I say, buildings require foundations that are load-bearing. Barrels of apples don't. Just that small difference makes a difference to how we think about what we know and what we might know. Anyway, yeah, that's all for now. That's what I'll do.